question about this bingo board is, have you learned your lesson yet? And realistically, I think the only possible answer to that is no. But I have learned some fun facts, spicy numbers, and ways that I suck. So let's talk about them. And welcome back to another video. Or rather, welcome back to the video. The video that has been omnipresent in my brain since the 31st of December. December has 31 days, right? Whenever the last day of December was. Forever in the background, sneaking tendrils into my everyday. Now, we know that January for me is always a tricky month, but it was particularly head soupy last month. And so despite my anxieties, I decided to put this video off just a little bit so that I could enjoy making fun of myself with you. Because I know, like a beloved sibling, that you are in fact also making fun of me too. And that most of the time, I deserve it. But before we get to my bingo board wrap up and see how well or how poorly I did, I would first like to thank the sponsors of today's video, Ana Luisa. I think it would be pretty surprising if you'd spent any time around my channel at all and you had not already heard of Ana Luisa. They are a luxury, sustainable jewellery brand who are bringing you lasting pieces for every budget. And this month, because it is Valentine's month, je t'aime. They are bringing you an entire Valentine's week of self-love. There is so much emphasis in February on Valentine's Day on having a partner, on doing all of the traditional hallmarky things that companies want to sell you. But Ana Luisa aren't about buying into that mass marketing message, because just like they break the mold when it comes to making their jewellery, using recycled materials that have had an entire life before they even get to you, offsetting 100% of their carbon emissions so that the planet thinks that we're all invisible with our shinies. They are also breaking the mold on what Valentine's Day should mean to you. In other words, Ana Luisa and I want you to treat yourself, not treat your shelf, not in this video, treat yourself. And you could perhaps do it with this beautiful piece. This is their Lori Mother of Pearl necklace. It is a tiny, delicate little heart, but as with all of Ana Luisa's pieces, it makes a big statement. Even the smallest, finest chain from Ana Luisa sets off my outfits. And y'all know that I like to wear a lot of big, bold colours. So if you would like to celebrate yourself for Valentine's Day, if you would like to give yourself a treat, then you can get 25% off of your purchase using my link down in the description below. Remember, all of Ana Luisa's pieces are vigorously tested for tarnish and wear and tear. So whatever you purchase today is not just a gift to yourself, it's also an investment in yourself. Go check out my link down in the description below because I know that you will be glad that you did. So let's scooch on over to make room for the pretties. And let's start off with the obvious things. Because if you were around for me dropping my bingo board from hell 2024, then you will know that I have already gleaned quite a few things from doing my bingo board from hell in 2023. Specifically, I am talking about the new squares that exist on my new bingo board. So going through them one by one, things that we definitely learned are that I don't allow myself to reread. I invariably prioritise newer books in my collection over going back and rereading books that have brought me a lot of joy in the past, or books that are actual favourites, books that I have read multiple times in the past. Similarly, we have a TBR veteran square on this one, which is because, again, I am prioritising newer books in my collection, and by that I don't mean most anticipated books, because we know for a fact that I am not prioritising those. I am not prioritising my new reads that are coming through the door, which is why, of course, we have the 60% square and omnipresent read what you freaking buy square, which will be on every bingo board henceforth. But what I mean by new books is that books that came in within the last year and a half or so maybe, and although I have gone through my collection a lot and culled a lot of older books that I wasn't interested in, there are still older books that I am interested in on my shelves, and I'm not reading them, and they're only going to get older and further away from me, and the urge is only going to get further and further away from me to read them. So we're fixing that with this square. Obviously, we also discovered in 2023 the actual state of my series reading right now, both how many series I have on the go and how many series are just like one book away from the completing them, but my brain is like, no. We don't finish series, we don't let go of characters, we don't do that. And that really needs to not be a thing anymore. That really needs to not be a thing going forward. And so we still have the series tracker square, although it is a little bit changed, and I'll talk about that a little bit as we go on and see how last year's series tracking did. And then finally, the last most relevant square we have to learning lessons from last year is my 10 rainy day books square, because rainy day books for me are very different from TBR veterans. Rainy day books can literally be a rainy day book from the minute that I purchase them. And in case you are new to the definition of rainy day books, it is a book that you desperately want to read, that you think will probably be a 5-star. It's right up there with all of the other books that you desperately want to read, but for some reason this one book just needs to stay on your shelves for a perfect time, for a perfect rainy day to pick it up. And for me that really can happen from the minute that I purchase a book. I can just be so convinced that that's going to be a perfect book for me that I'm like, oh, I'll keep it for when I need it, for when I have a bad mental health day, or I don't know, insert other excuse here. That is a huge problem that we identified in 2023, and we are going to fix it this time. So those were all of the new squares that were very obvious issues that I found in 2023, that were things that we could glean just from the way that I was reading going through the year. But there are plenty other issues that I have learned from my bingo board. First up, we have the square that all of you have been waiting for. The square that you guys were cheering me on the most for, were desperately trying to find me ways to reduce. Like, you guys were really in my corner for this one. I have never truly held myself accountable to how many books I read in a year versus how many books that I purchase. And doing that the way that I did in 2023 has definitely changed the way that I think about my book buying. So, in 2023, I bought 171 books. That is how many books actually came into my house that were purchased with my own monies. But we know from my stats video that I only read 105 books. And not all of those books were books that I had newly purchased. A vast percentage of those books were books that existed in my library already. So in total, for 2023, I managed to read 50.9% of the books that I purchased in the year, which is a scary percentage. Because the other thing that I was keeping track of in 2023 was the amount of money that I was spending on the books that I was bringing in and then not reading. And you know what? There is a wider conversation to be had there about what books are for. And I've been very clear about this in the past, that I do think there's a difference between book reading and book collecting. I think both, and a mixture of both, are perfectly valid. And as you guys know from the philosophy of my unhauls, I do believe that bringing an object into your house that gave you joy to buy in the moment and gave you joy to sit on your shelf and think about the possibilities of it is just as valid as buying that object and using that object and then getting rid of that object. For me, buying books and making a library of possibilities brings me joy, and I don't think that's ever not going to be a part of my personality. It very much is, and I don't think that I should have to just bin that part of my personality and be like, no, you can't have that joy, that little thing that makes you happy in this world, you can't have that. But for both practical reasons, for both reasons of actual cash money and that we need that to live, and also for my mental health, I do have to change the way that I buy books in 2024, and that has already started. I have already purchased books. You're gonna see a haul very soon, but you're also gonna see a different way of me keeping myself accountable to this 60% target for 2024. And so realistically, I need to find a way to combine the hobby of buying, the hobby of reading, and also the mental health aspects of keeping track of doing both of those things. I need to be saying no to lovely friends who love particular tropes or particular genres that I don't love particularly, that I don't have a high success rate with, and say no to the recommendations in those genres. And I need to unsubscribe from more publisher newsletters, because getting the new shiny literally thrown in my face constantly every time I look at my inbox is leading to spontaneous purchases, or rather spontaneous pre-orders, which just don't help me. So next up we have the Buddy Reads square, and I can confirm that I did in fact get 12 out of 12 buddy reads. I did in fact finish with a bingo possibility in this square, but you will notice that my buddy read square does not factor anywhere on my 2024 bingo board from hell, and that is because this square really taught me a bunch of things about how I read. Specifically, what it has taught me is that when it is a read along, when it is a long-term project like Around the Disc in 800 Days or the Fits Along this year, I have stamina. I can keep up. I love me a deadline. I might read it on the deadline. I might be reading it all the way up to midnight on that deadline, but I love a deadline. However, it has also taught me that outside of long-term read-alongs, I find buddy reads really difficult, and that is because I am a chaos goblin. I read very chaotically. I read multiple books at a time. Sometimes I will get so obsessed with a book that I can't wait to give my thoughts to the person I'm buddy reading with. If we're reading a set number of pages a day or getting to the end of a chapter in a day, I can't hold myself back from continuing to read, and I just forget to give my thoughts as I'm going along because I'm so obsessed with the book. Or it is the complete opposite. Sometimes I'm not feeling that book that day and I don't want to pick it up that day, and so I don't read that day of pages and I don't get to the end of that chapter, and I never leave my thoughts because I'm constantly catching up, which then gives me the feeling of failure, which is not what you're supposed to have when you're having like a fun buddy read with friends. That being said, that doesn't mean that I'm never going to do any buddy reads ever again, but it has taught me that I need to be kind of more honest with myself in the way that I do them. I need to kind of say to people, I would love to do a buddy read with you and talk about this book, but it might need to be less structured for me, or we might need to use the Storygraph's new buddy read function to leave notes for ourselves throughout. Either way, this was too structured and too regimented a square for me, and I have learned that I don't want that energy going into 2024. Next up, we have my read aloud to Lovely Spouse Harry square. Now, you guys haven't seen Lovely Spouse Harry for a little while on my channel. Here's a few pictures of him, just so that you remember what he looks like and what you remember what we look like together. We are going to try and fix that in 2024. Harry would love to be back on the channel, and I would definitely love to have him here talking about his books. So there will definitely be more Harry in 2024, but if you are missing Harry in general, then he is very frequently featured on my Patreon streams. So if you want your Lovely Spouse Harry fix and you are in the Lovely Spouse Harry fan club, Patreon is definitely the place to go. But in case you are new to my channel and this is the first time that you're finding out about Lovely Spouse Harry, we have been together now for 12 years. And in those years we have read a lot of books together. Both Buddy read him on Audible, me with a physical copy, and also with me reading aloud books to Harry. Now, we used to do that a lot when we first got together. In the first sort of like 5 or 6 years of our relationship, we had a book on the go with each other almost continuously, and some of those were long ass books, like some of those were big books, but we loved it. We loved doing that, and I had noticed that we had really dropped off doing that last year, and I wanted to try and find out whether that was because we were just not prioritizing it, or if it was just not an activity we wanted to do anymore. And so we finished with 3 books read aloud last year, which is great because it is another bingo possibility in this square. However, it is significantly low for us. We would never usually go through a year only reading 3 books. And we sat down and we talked about this, and what we've realised is just that Harry and I have a lot more hobbies now than we used to. We're both doing a lot of different things with our hands and our eyeballs, and although we're hanging out in the same space all the time when we're doing that, we are both doing other things. That said, we do want to be doing a little bit more exploring in 2024. That's a personal goal for us. So there is a likelihood that we're still going to be reading books together this year because we will be driving fairly long distances together, but I don't want to make it a goal. I don't want to make it something that I force us to do. So we've learned from this square that it's like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's fine, because Harry often takes my recommendations anyway and often reads the books that I ask him to or tell him to in his own time, and we still discuss them and it doesn't change the enjoyment for us. So that's what happened with that square. Looking at my bingo board, however, this does mean that there's no possibility for a bingo on this top row. I only completed 2 of the squares. I can't do anything with the other one, so wah, 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 wah. Next up, we're going to talk about my Read 12 Kindle Books square, and unsurprisingly I did not complete this one either. I only read 8 of the 12 Kindle books that I was hoping to read in 2023, and this square, this square more than anything else taught me that when I don't want to do something, I am not going to do it. This square more than any other square taught me that my stubbornness is still more than alive and well, because I just could not make myself pick up books on my Kindle. What I discovered with my Kindle is that I have a lot of graveyard Kindle books on there, and we know this. This is something that I talked about when I created this square in the first place. There are a lot of books that I get on my Kindle because I really want to read them, and then they just go there to die. And also I have discovered that there is something deeply unsatisfying to me about finishing a Kindle book. I don't get the satisfaction of like taking the tabs out of it, taking the bookmark out of it. I just don't get the dopamine hit from it that I get from finishing a physical book. And one thing that clicked for me last year when I was thinking about this is that I think one of the reasons why I find reading on a Kindle unsatisfying is because I have no visual representation of how much I have left to go, because the X amount of time left in a chapter or the X amount of percent through a book that shows up on your Kindle depending on what you choose are just numbers to me. And your girl has dyscalculia and doesn't do numbers, so those aren't satisfying for me. It doesn't help me to see that I'm 43% through a book, but it does help me to visually see how much I have left to go. So in 2024, I will not be putting any pressure on myself whatsoever to read from my Kindle, because I don't like it. However, one thing that I will point out that is a win for me is that finally, I now have access to a digital library. You guys might not know this, but I live in a small town just outside of Edinburgh, and unfortunately my local libraries, our small town libraries, are great if you want book 74 in a crime series or if you want a Mills and Boons romance, but they're not great for much of anything else, and so I couldn't make use of my library even though I wanted to. But now, because of the pepperoni, I think the rules for digital borrowing for the central Edinburgh libraries have changed, and so I now have access to both the audiobook and the Kindle library. And so if I am going to choose to read a book on Kindle this year, I'm going to get it from my library, because even if I don't read the whole book on my Kindle, at least I can read a good amount of it to decide whether I actually want to purchase the physical copy of it. And also woohoo for having a best friend who is a librarian and who was the one who discovered that I could now do this. Thanks, Kirsty, love you. Now for a square that was a complete success, like a complete success, and that is my 12 audiobooks square. Not only did I complete this square off, but I more than completed it off. I finished on 18 audiobooks for the year, which means that this is a bingoable square for me. Unlike the read my Kindle book square, the audiobook square did exactly what I wanted it to. It got me back into picking up my audiobooks, into that being a habit that I had, because I had very much fallen out of that habit in favour of like rewatching my favourite TV shows and stuff mindlessly in the background instead of listening to a book while I was doing admin tasks and other things with my hands. I am delighted to say that I am really enjoying audiobooks, maybe a little bit too much, and that whenever I'm picking up one of my physical books, I am also then checking now if my library has the audiobook or if I have the audiobook that I bought previously, so that I can read the two together. I have really enjoyed immersive reading where I'm listening to it and also following along with my eyes on the page, and I've also just really enjoyed being out of the house and being able to listen to my audiobook and like make everything else go away. So what we've learned from this square is that we definitely need to have it on the 2024 bingo board, which is exactly where it is. But we have also learned a kind of deeper thing, I guess, about this square, and that's that I think one of the reasons why I fell out of the habit of listening to audiobooks is because I wasn't in the habit of sitting quietly with my own thoughts anymore. And I think one of the things that I learned that was most valuable in 2023 is that when that happens, when I get to the point where I don't want to listen to audiobooks anymore, where I can't follow along with them. I need to check in with myself and ask myself what's going on in my body and what's going on with my emotions, because sometimes it means that I am hella anxious and I just can't concentrate, and I need to address why I'm anxious to get back to the good place, you know? And then next up on this line, we have my read 5 non-fiction books, which I absolutely bossed. I completely ripped through that square in 2023. I ended up finishing it 3 times with some left over, you guys. My final total for 2023 for non-fiction books was 16, which again makes this a very bingoable square. And I actually did learn a lot from having this square on the board, because we know that the reason that I put it there in 2023 was because I had this impression in my head that I wasn't picking up enough non-fiction, or that I had fallen off with it. And I don't know where I got that impression from, because looking back on the year previous's books, I had read quite a lot of non-fiction. And so I think the actual issue wasn't so much that I felt like I wasn't reading enough, but that I actually wanted to read more. And I've discovered that one of the reasons why I don't let myself pick up non-fiction is because I feel like I'm not bringing you guys enough new fiction. I feel like if I come to my tops and bottoms or my TBRs or my recommendations list, that I am not bringing you enough brand new fiction or new starts to series that you're going to be excited about, and that you're going to get bored listening to me talk about non-fiction. But once again, that's a logical fallacy, because I've always talked about non-fiction on my channel to varying degrees over the years, and you guys haven't gone anywhere. And I know that I get comments from you guys which are like, we don't have reading tastes that align, but I'm here to listen to you talk about books passionately because you enjoy it and I enjoy listening to you. And I'm trying to actually listen to the nice words and the compliments that you guys say and not just beat myself up. So because of that, what I've learned from 2023 is that 5 non-fiction books in a square is not enough, and we have upped that square to 10 non-fiction books. And also that I need to pick up more non-fiction books. I need to allow myself to just do that, to indulge in it whenever I feel like it. Sometimes I get on a hyper-fixated run of a certain topic and that's all I want to read for a while. But we do have to also keep an eye in 2024 on how many non-fiction books I am buying. Because what I am discovering is that more than any other shelf in my library, my non-fiction books, which are the ones right behind me, are consistently chock-a-block. That bookcase is consistently rammed with non-fiction. However, my rate of buying non-fiction does not match up with my rate of reading it. And there are quite a few TBR veterans on my non-fiction shelves, like a large percentage of TBR veterans. And I need to get them gone. They need to not be there anymore. So we need to work on that and keep a closer eye on that in 2024. Now, looking at this row, that does mean that this row is once again not bingoable, because I did not finish my Kindle book square. We can't do anything with that row. However, it does make the other 2 rows still bingoable. We could get more bingos down this way, and there is still a possibility for a diagonal here also, so we shall see. The next square up is my Read 12 series tracker books. Now, this was one of the squares that went onto my bingo board mid-year, so it wasn't a focus for the entire year. And luckily, I did deal with that problem. I read 12 series tracker books, so I did in fact complete off this square. It is bingoable. I still feel like even though I put it there mid-year, I should be focusing more on this goal. I should be reading more series tracker books, and so it is a square that is on my 2024 board. However, the 2024 board kind of combines 2 of the squares from my 2023 board. So first of all, we had this one, which is my series tracker one, so just read 12 books at any position in a series, just as long as they are in a series and you're progressing with them. And then this one. This one was my finish 3 ongoing series square, and I only finished 2. I did not in fact complete off a third in December like I said I was going to try to. So that effectively makes this square a dead square. It is also not bingoable. But in combination with my series tracker square, it did teach me a lot about my series reading. We know that I don't like to finish series because I have to let go of the characters. We know that I like starting new series, I guess, because it gives me a dopamine hit, but that I don't often progress on in those series, although I do buy the subsequent books in those series, which leads to sometimes DNFing a series when I own all of it, but I've only read a couple of the books, which is something that we're also not doing anymore in 2024. We're buying the next book when we need it, or we're pre-ordering it when we have loved the previous one. But we're not pre-ordering 3, you know, we're pre-ordering 1, the next one, and if I haven't read it, I'm not getting the next one and the next one and the next one. But also what these squares have showed me is that I tend to read a lot of longer ongoing series. There aren't very many trilogies or duologies in there. They are mostly long-term series because that's what I like. I like to spend more time with the characters, but that does mean that I am somewhere in the middle of many series, and that needs to not be the case in 2024. I need to try and bring down the number of series that I am reading by progressing them. So both of these squares have become 1 square on my 2024 board, and they've taught me a lot about my reading. These were very humbling squares for me in 2023. And then finally we have my 10 graphic novel square, and I am pleased to say that I not only completed this off, but that I had 2 left over. So I actually read 12 graphic novels from my shelves in 2023. This is an interesting one because almost all of the books for this one came from my shelves, my pre-existing collection, but it was also kind of a kick up the bum, a moment of realisation that I had been hoarding these graphic novels for ages as rainy day books, as a, oh, we'll read that when we're in the mood for X. Graphic novels are so spenny, and I just was not thinking deeply enough about some of those purchases. So this square did not make it onto my 2024 board. The only graphic novels that I have left on my shelves that I haven't already read that I own is the End of the Morning Glory series, so I am going to be rereading that series in 2024, and finally finishing off the last 3 volumes, I think, because it's very complicated. There's absolutely no way that I will remember what's going on in the last volumes without rereading them. But also, once that series of graphic novels is finished, I don't think I'm going to be investing in any more graphic novels for quite a while. So we have 2 bingoable squares here and 1 that is very much not, and they are unfortunately not all lined up. So that means that when it comes to final bingos, I got 1 down the middle. Buddy Reads graphic novels and audiobooks got me a middle board bingo, and I got 1 on the diagonal as well. So Books Aloud audiobooks and series tracker books really came through for me there. But there are a lot of squares that did not count on this board. That's actually something that I was a lot more savvy about when it came to my 2024 board, and again, if you are going to start this challenge, I have a link in all of my videos for my 2024 bingo board from hell, so you can start that challenge at any point in the year. I started my 2023 challenge last year in March, so it's never too late to decide that you're doing it. But if you are going to be doing a board, I really suggest that you think about where you're going to put the squares. On my 2024 board, you can see that almost all of the 10 squares are positioned on the corners, and the one that isn't, my TBR veteran square, is in the middle of 2 other squares that I think I am very likely to complete off. Probably more than once, in fact, which means that this row will be easily bingoable as long as I do that. And it means that you're not then working towards one really difficult goal that you're so excited that you did for yourself, but then it doesn't count for a bingo because the other things in that row were also really hard. Now, the other thing about my 2023 board is that I haven't decided on any prizes, so I don't really know what I get for getting 2 bingos on this board other than the satisfaction of actually having got 2. I don't know what I get for that, but I should definitely get something. So leave any suggestions of things that I should do for myself in my comments down below. I do have a full reward system in place for my 2024 board, so when I get bingos or complete squares off, I will be getting prizes for that, and that is something I wish I'd thought more deeply about in my 2023 one. Maybe it would have given me a bit more motivation. So that is it, guys. That is the final numbers for my 2023 board. That's my wrap up of my thoughts. I hope that you enjoyed it. I am absolutely loving seeing you guys 2024 bingo boards from hell, and then seeing your updates. February was the first month I got to see actual numbers on your boards, so please continue tagging me at Literary Diversions on Instagram or here on YouTube if you are giving me updates for your boards. I absolutely live for it. If you have got this far through the video, then leave me a star emoji down below for all of the stars that I did manage to get on my 2023 board in the end. And also tell me down below, what is the one thing that you learned from 2023 about your reading that you want to change in 2024? I'm always interested in other people's actual motivations behind their goals on their bingo boards. Don't forget to check out Ana Luisa's Valentine's sale if you would like to get 25% off of a piece just for you. You can do that using my link down below in the description box. If you're new to my channel and you want to see how I get on with my 2024 bingo board, then remember to hit that subscribe button. And if you're a returning viewer who is addicted to my stats, then make sure you hit that like button down below on your way out because it really does help my channel. And I will see all of you guys really soon.